I'm Caroline Rose, and my album is called The Art of Forgetting. The only thing that feels different about this record to me than ones I've made in the past is I didn't want to make it for anybody but myself. The reason why I'm so happy with it now is because I feel like I had complete final cut over everything. I didn't really want to produce anything. I didn't want to look at the computer. I didn't even know if I wanted to make music anymore. Right after Superstar, the last album came out, and got like its head cut off. Pretty much right after that, I was just like alone in my bedroom, going through a breakup and going through just some hard shit. And writing songs. It was like falling in love with writing songs again, just for pure pleasure, and not just pleasure, but almost like a necessity. It reminded me a lot of making this record. Reminded me a lot of when I first started making music when I was a teenager, and I had like no outlet and was so depressed and miserable and alone and had no outlet to express myself except for music. It was like the heavens parted and gave me this like miracle thing, and it felt like that. And I think just the more the songs started to collect, and I just enjoyed it. I was enjoying the process, and I made a pact to myself that I wasn't going to make a single decision that was business minded. Because one thing that I kind of reflected on in the last couple of years is that all my biggest regrets in my life are making business decisions over artistic ones, and like sacrificing the artistic, idea or whatever, this like pure, beautiful idea for something that has to do with like fucking money. It's so soul sucking, and I don't know, something just changed in me. I feel different than I was, not that long ago.
Yeah.
And it kind of shows up in the album. I just didn't want to involve anyone. No suits were involved in the making of this album. And I'm really happy that it feels like very me in that moment. Something really beautiful happens when you're making a project, especially one that's really intimate and one that's very introspective, because you make these little discoveries in the process of making it. And that happens every time with me. Like every time I make an album, I'll come out of it kind of learning a lot about myself. This album is like about a particular time. It was a really difficult time, and a huge time of growth, like personal growth. And I think like at the end of it, I, both in writing the songs and making the album, became a different person. I think for the better.
That's a good place to be.
Yeah.
How do you feel like, or I guess, you said you started with falling in love with like the acoustic guitar again, but like sonically, where did you end up taking the record? And this is a record that, that you wrote and produced yourself, and like what sort of sounds were important to you during the process of actually producing this?
Yeah, well, I think like the make of every great album is if you strip away all the production and you can just play a song, and if that holds up, everything else is like it's just making it even better. And I think what I came to realize making The Art of Forgetting is I have a lot of work to do on like learning how to love myself and respect myself and know my own boundaries. I think that was like something I've kind of learned recently. So, you know, yeah, but I guess it just started with the songs, and then they collected, and I was gonna have somebody else produce it because I didn't really want to go through the pain and agony of having, it's just a big burden to do so much yourself, which, you know, it has its benefits because I love when an artist does as much as they can because it's you're getting as much as you can, you're hearing as much as you can and seeing as much as you can from the artist, and I think that's like so cool and interesting. But yeah, it has its toll. It takes its toll,
But you feel like after this experience with this record, you at least coming out of it, you're like, okay, like I recognize where there's room for improvement, and also like the improvement that I've seen over the last couple of years. Like the fact that you got through all that and you're not broken and you're here.
Yeah, well, I learned a lot from the last one. I learned a lot from you know, Superstar was the first album that I produced by myself. You know,
which is like a huge feat. I mean,
it's like it's a, and I wasn't, I didn't just produce it. I was like kind of obsessed with doing like as much as I could myself, and this time I just wanted to enjoy the process. It was like it was a big deal to me to enjoy it, and that's kind of ultimately why I ended up producing it. Was it just sort of started coming together in a like really natural, beautiful, organic way, and the music that I was listening to at the time, I was really looking for I was looking for music that was empowering. I was so low. I was really low. It was just a tough time for yours truly. And I was looking for ways to feel strong in myself, and in as simple a way as possible. I was listening to a lot of music, a lot of vocal-based music, and a lot of like acoustic things, or really simple music that sounded powerful, like vocalists, and a lot of kind of intriguing melodies. I was listening to a lot of Middle Eastern music and vocalists from like Georgia and the Balkans and India. I mean, I was listening to kind of everything from around the world, just ways that people have used their voices in really inspiring ways that I haven't heard before, and I didn't even know that the human voice could do. And a lot of it I like just tried on my own. And the more I was trying stuff, and I was doing all this vocal-based stuff, and then I had all this time to experiment, so I was experimenting with different tape techniques of like this kind of theme of memory kept coming up, and I was trying to capture like what the sound would be of like if you were trying to make something sound like a memory fading or glitching. I was doing all these experiments with tape because like the way that it works, like, you know, the more you use it over time, it's like these flicks of metal, you know, chip off, and it's like disintegrating. It's like basically the way that our minds work. Our bodies are like getting older and aging, and our memories, we forget stuff over time. And so I was doing stuff with that, and like playing all this piano. I was listening to a lot of classical piano music, and all of it just sort of started coming together in this like very natural way where I was like, oh, I think I know what I want this album to sound like. And then it was really fun. Then it got really fun. And I worked with such a good solid group of people. I had some of my bandmates on it. My drummer Riley Gears on it. It plays drums on a bunch of songs, and James McAllister plays drums on a handful of songs. Mike Dondero on bass. I played a bunch of the bass and like keys parts, and Nick Sanborn from Sylvanesso is featured on a bunch of modular stuff, and he taught me like all these cool tricks with using modular, because I had gotten really obsessed with this particular sound, and I didn't really know much about it, and I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to collaborate with somebody. And we had met kind of organically in the studio, and it would just seem like such a perfect fit to ask him if he wanted to. We were just like geeking out, and we had such a fun time in the studio, and I learned so much from him. He like really added some very cool things to the album. And a lot of stuff that I ended up like taking back to my studio and working on my own little modular box, my unit, and kind of building off of it. So it was a really like collaborative effort. And my new friend John Joseph is on it. He helped with a lot of the tape effects, and he got the really amazing drum sounds. He's a really talented engineer and producer, and it's mixed by Beatriz Artola. I love her so much. She's amazing. She has such a good, not just an ear for like an artistic ear, but she knows how to pull out like every ounce of emotion from the songs, like the dynamism and color. It like I've never heard a mix engineer quite like her. She's incredible. Highly recommend to anyone to work with her. And produced by myself. The string arrangements were done by my friends Sammy Wiseman and Tall Katz. They did such an amazing job. The string players are just like the best. So talented.
Mastered?
Yeah, mastered by Greg Calby. My friend Adam Schatz plays on it as well. He plays saxophone on a couple songs. Calby's amazing. I mean, really, it's a dream team. It's a dream team.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it's my dream album. Love Lover Friend was the first song that I had written and was like, I know this is going to be on an album. And it just felt like such a perfect starting point to a story to me. Like a jumping off place. I guess to kind of start some sort of journey, I guess. And it just came together so naturally. I wrote the song in one sitting. It was almost like immediate. It was such a natural process. And then when I was demoing it out, I had been listening to a lot of like Balkan-inspired vocalists. Anybody who has heard Bulgarian Women's Television Choir is going to recognize the Balkan influence on this song. But the way that they sing, it's like almost like a guttural cry, and it just really perfectly captured what I was trying to go for in the song. And I did all the background vocals in like one pass. I just do like one pass, and it was so natural coming out. It just felt like they're my ancestors or something. Like the song of my ancestors was coming out through my body in this song. And all the layers it just made itself. It was one of those things that just came so naturally, and it hasn't really changed that much since the original demo. The original demo I made in probably 2020 at some point, and I remember playing it for some friends, and they were like, "You could release it like this." It was just layered vocals and guitar, and that was it. And I had been kind of messing around with some tape effects on the guitar to make it feel sort of atmospheric, and it has like a nostalgic feeling to it, the sort of like glitchy tape sound, and I wanted to try and capture that, and it just worked.
Yeah.
It just worked, and the strings had only enhanced it. I had the swells in there in the vocals, and then when the strings were added, it was just such a natural addition. They had been working on the strings, and I was like, oh, just put them in with the swells. Like, let's make it really big and dynamic. And it's kind of a difficult song to master because it's so dynamic. It's like, you pop on your headphones and crank it up, and then you get like blasted out by these big giant swells. But I wanted it to feel like you're in some sort of like an intimate, or almost like an empty theater, and you're watching someone perform. And then when those voices and those big swells come in, it's like the lights come up and you realize that there's actually just like a room filled with people. And I wanted it to feel like hi-fi, like it was coming out of like the middle of nowhere and just sort of like encompassing your head. And then it gets like real small again. So it's kind of, I'm always sort of trying to mess around with this, just sort of like playful juxtapositions of things. So like taking these something that's like lo-fi and small, and then making like big hi-fi sound around it. That's where the whole aesthetic for the album started, was that idea. It was like, I want to have the performance be sort of intimate and lo-fi, because that's how I was writing them. It was like alone in a room. I was staying with my sound engineer in his extra bedroom, because I didn't have any place to go, and it was really isolating and lonely, and I ended up, that became my little my little nest, and I wanted that to come through in the music, and you can kind of, I feel like you can hear that. It's like, it has an intimacy, but it also has this like grandiose emotion that was also real at the time. I think all that stuff was like building up in me, and I don't know, somewhere along the way, it just became like really difficult for me to express the full depth of my emotion. And then at some point, like the just floodgates opened, and it's like, no, just embrace your emotions. Just do it. Just go for it. Watch me move from house to house. My ear to the window. Rebirth started from an interesting place, because I had kind of had this idea for a long time. I had been sitting on it for a while. And I had the melody for a while that I actually wrote on a ukulele, which is like the least sexy instrument I can think of, besides like a actual Hawaiian person playing it on a beach somewhere, which is very sexy. But that song just came back to me. I think probably when I was just noodling around on the guitar, and the lyrics, I had started the lyrics a while ago, and it really spoke to me. Sometimes, it's like I guess it's like writing something down, or maybe like reading something, and you don't quite, it's like, oh, that's nice, and you don't really quite, it doesn't click, and then some time passes, and all of a sudden you're like, I get that now. I understand that. and it was almost like that song was just incubating for a while and needed some time to just have the proper setting.
All of the subtle rejections, wrap them all up in a bow. Say thank you, nice to know you. I loved all of our time. Maybe I'll see you down the line. You know you never knew my worth. Honestly, neither did I.
Miami was one that it came out really naturally. It was just one of those songs that I really needed to get off my chest. I'd been going through a breakup and it sucked. And I was just feeling so down. It was like that amidst a lot of other things that just made it such a hard time. And it was so isolating and lonely. And I was so, when you're going through something painful like that, it's all these emotions are kind of surging through you at the same time. And sometimes it's like hard to tell whether you're like angry or sad or, I don't know, you are like ruminating on some regrets or maybe all of those things. But Miami was one of those songs that I was just like, I'm going to just spew out all of it. And so there's kind of a little bit of everything in there. There's like anger and sadness, and there's even humor in it. I spent a lot of time just talking to my family on the phone and stuff. And those little conversations, they're all over the record. And to me, I find it kind of humorous, but it's such a release. It's one of those songs where you're like, I just gotta purge this thing that's inside. And, it's like the guitar comes in, it's like squealing, and it all kind of, it just made so much sense. It sort of wrote itself in that way of just, it needed to be released. It's like a beast in a cage.
Caroline, I just wanted to say hi and just hear your voice. I love you so much, and I think about you every day, and I hope everything's going good with you.
Interludes are from my grandma's voicemails. She left me all these voicemails over the course of years. And, this theme of like memory it just kept recurring throughout this whole process. And I was listening to her lose her memory, essentially. Like she was like she would forget that she'd be on the phone, and then she'd start having a conversation with someone else, or all the messages she would send me, she would say almost the exact same thing every time, but it would be like ever so slightly different. It was almost like she forgot that she says the same thing every time. But I could always tell what type of mood she was in by like the timbre of her voice, and usually be like, Caroline, I'm thinking about you, and I thought about you yesterday. It's just like so wholesome and sweet. And I'm always looking for these like ways to put two things together that kind of express that kind of tell a story. And so, here's my grandma just like wants to connect and wants to say hi and like wants to know if I'm eating well. And here I am, I'm not picking up the phone. I'm miserable and trying to like love myself and trying to love life and basically pick myself up off the ground. And I just found it like such a comical. It is kind of comical to me, and it's a moment. These little moments of brevity on the album where. It's like a little reminder that, like you say, there are people thinking about you and care about you, and like it's gonna be okay.
I just wanna be there for someone completely. A foundation for walls and a ceiling.
Everywhere I go, I bring the rain. That's another song that I'm trying to make something big out of something small, like a just. I don't know why I gravitate towards this so much, but I love sad songs that sound like fun and poppy, and I don't know. I guess it's just like a different way to tell a story, and sometimes when you feel just so incredibly shitty, the thing that you need most is to gaslight yourself into feeling better. and that's sort of like, it feels like a gaslight song to me. I'm like, I'm writing a pop song that has this, big, catchy chorus, and it has a pretty despondent message, but it makes you feel like, okay. I don't know. It really resonated with me. Like the way that it was, the way that I wanted it to sound, and the whole idea of the chorus is to have multiple people sing together. It's like where the word comes from, and I love the idea of somebody being so depressed and feeling so shitty, and having like everyone sing this message together in an actual chorus. Like it was just kind of a perfect little like cherry on top to the whole feeling. And I'm happy with how it came out. I think it's cool. To talk about your pain in a way that you can tap your feet to is always going to be interesting to me.